everybody, Speedy here, Banu Studio Inc. Like to finish out the subject that I'm doing on Tales from the Drafting Table, the Wolverine Montage. This is episode 19, and we're at the conclusion. All right, let's get after it, shall we? All right. Well, this is the conclusion of my drafting process for the Wolverine montage I'm putting together. And it's been a pretty cool experience. It's had some bumpy places in between, and but I felt like it was a good subject. It's one of my all-time favorite like comic book characters, and I'm a big comic book geek. So I thought, well, I'll just do this montage, and I was ready to move on from my collection and put it away or sell it, one of the two. Doing this montage made me fall back in love with it again, and did I end up selling my collection? No, I didn't. I ended up buying more, actually, and filling in a few gaps, and started hanging out at Star Comics, and so it actually, instead of closing the door on a hobby I've had my whole life, it reignited it. But I mean, it kind of also refreshed why I was a big fan of comic books to begin with, and why I fell in love with them. I do know a lot about them, and I shared that throughout this series. Also, this was a good subject to start out this new series with, to kind of figure out the format, how I wanted to approach things. And I learned a lot from it. And the benefit of choosing to copy somebody else's work and to kind of pay homage to the creators behind Wolverine allowed my mind to not be focusing on the internal components and the development of an intellectual property, since technically I was really just copying somebody else's that I've grown up with and I've been around my whole life. And so I was very familiar with it, so it didn't take a lot of work to just sit and copy it. It's a very zen kind of thing. And but I did learn a lot, and that's the reason why I chose to start this entire series off with copying somebody else's and doing a kind of montage and an ode to the artist Frank Miller. I know a lot of people know him as a movie director or into movies and all that, but he was an artist for 40 years before he got into doing movies and stuff. I'm glad he did. I mean, technically, I think the best like script writers and creators for the movie industry technically come out of the comic book world, in my opinion, because they spend a great deal of their life and their career essentially doing what accounts for very high end storyboarding. Most movies get storyboards done to be a guide, if you will, to the people involved in the project, because when you're doing like a movie, you're involving hundreds of creatives, and you've got a main creative directing them, so it's a lot of moving parts. And so having a storyboard ahead of time, a color storyboard ahead of time, and the concept art and so forth completed, keeps everybody in the same vision of what you're trying to accomplish as a movie director. So I think that comic book artists and comic book writers make natural to transition into becoming directors. And Frank Miller proved it. He did some amazing movies. And I believe a lot of that came from his background as a comic book artist for such a long time. And he worked on some of the, like, he was one of the earliest, I think maybe the earliest Wolverine artist. Also, he revived Batman. Now, Batman's been around a really long time, and it's had its highs and it's had its lows. And when he took over doing Batman and created the Dark Knight series, it you know, woke Batman back up because I mean Batman was popular, but like when the earliest Batman movie had come out in the later era, like in the what 90s, it leaned back on its 1930s kind of heavy, dark noir kind of style because there was a period from the 60s to the 80s where he was very bubblegum. For a character who's got such a dark story, it didn't really fit, you know? Frank Miller brought the grit back, brought the darkness. He created the Dark Knight. He created a Killing Joke storyline. So, you know, you can kind of see that in his directing and in his movies that he later does, and in his own solo work, Sin City and so forth, which I have. It's really awesome, by the way. I love his black and white, his contrast, his style, his approach, his grittiness, and so that's why I chose him. Um, but in terms of my experience with with this series, I'm going to be doing this series forever. I enjoy it. It's a part of what I do, getting ready to make finals and things like that. So just sharing my process and sharing what's in my head when I go through these things. It's been a great experience for me. I hope that people have enjoyed it so far. It's started out really rough, but I improved it a lot, and I'm closer now to the way I really want it to function. I haven't really made any major changes to how I approach it, other than trying to speed up the artwork part of it, zoom in closer, get a better camera. Once I did that, as far as its format, it's really locked into the way I want to approach it. I would like it to take less numbers of episodes to get to completion, but I do need these to build up for the series. For the love of execution, I just like saying that a certain way. That series is where I do the final on the things that I draft. Now, some people, when they draft or they sketch up ideas, they don't put a lot into it before they go and do the final. They just do a few preliminary sketches and they move on. Me, I'm a very methodical artist, and so I do a lot of pre work. For me, it's a muscle memory thing. Technically, once I've drawn a character in a certain pose or drawn a character a certain way, and I take it all the way up to color and experimenting with color and contrast and things like that, I kind of get it locked into my body, into my muscles. So when I go do the final, it's so much faster, it's so much smoother, and I have a lot less mistakes that I have to worry about. Almost none, really. And so my finals come out really, really exceptionally well, but that's because I put a lot of really intense drafting time in before I go to a final. So I'm actually already almost polished before I start a final, and that's why I have this kind of process ahead of time where I use colored pencils, and I use them always when I'm drafting. So I'll draw something up, I'll sketch something up, and then I'll immediately go into color because that's the ultimate goal on most of the things I work on is to do them in color. Um, this one's been a really fun process, and I learned a lot during it. Though I mean, how saturated it is in black for that time period, and how, like I said, a lot of saturation of basic colors, a lot of red, a lot of orange, a lot of yellow in this, and like this brownish kind of, and a lot of brown, which is in the red kind. It's the brown that's in the red family. Uh, so I learned a lot, and I want to approach the final a little bit differently, and that's why in episode 20 of Tales from the Drafting Table, I'm actually going to do my write up in its own standalone episode to do the conclusion for the subject instead of this one being the pure conclusion. This one is the conclusion of the actual SketchUp and the color study part. It's not the conclusion of the process entirely. I'll do a short cap off one in episode 20 that takes everybody through what I do with my draft after I've completed my study. Because that's the way I look at it. I'm studying the subject like game planning, for how I'm going to do the final. And think of it in these terms. Had I just done a few preliminary sketches and jumped right into the final piece and on the final material, I would have made a ton of mistakes because you know what? I made a ton of mistakes in the drafting process. I prefer to make those mistakes in the drafting process rather than make those mistakes in the final. So I had the cleanest, tightest, best looking final product I can get. And also, I would have jumped in and would have been like, okay, my mindset, I'm doing color pencils. I would have jumped into the final with color pencils, and ultimately, what I learned from the drafting process is that's actually not its best medium. So, I mean, I'm that's a good demonstration of why I do my process the way I do my process. And so you have to look forward to is the next subject, the Aristotle and Plato tribute. That one's purely from my imagination. There will be a little bit of reference material because I'm doing portraits of both the men. This one is not going to be really heavy in a variety of color. This is going to be a lot more technical. Um, it's going to be a little bit of ethereal, almost kind of monochrome. This one, I definitely know what its final is going to be. I see it in my head all the time. So there's no surprise in this one, really. But its majority of this is coming from my imagination and not from reference material. The only thing I'll be referencing in that will be, closest examples like busts, if you will, of sculptures of them while they were alive. So that I have a really good detailed view of what they actually, people believe they look like. And there are those busts, those sculptures from their era. So, anyway, I look forward to taking you guys through the final step of my process in episode 20. There won't be any drawing in that. There'll be more me discussing, and this is probably going to drive people crazy. Yeah, write all over it in red pencil and red pen, because to me it's just a draft. It's not the final. It's just a sketch to me. It just happens to be that I do everything in color because I sketch more than geometry. I sketch light value and things like that. So, you know, no story time today, just a conclusion talk. All right, well, here we go. We are wrapped up now. I did do a write-up on it. I'm going to put that in episode 20. Felt like it was a good round number to just go ahead and do the write-up and the discussion on the changes and prepping it for its final in episode 20. But we have come to the conclusion of this subject. Tales from the Drafting Table has been pretty cool. I'm going to keep it going. The next subject for the series is going to be prepping for a painting, a tribute to Aristotle and Plato, something I came up with, made some notes on, done my research, and just kind of had a vision. So that's what's going to be coming up next as far as subject. But yeah, we'll do episode 20. We'll do a complete write-up of how I've analyzed this, the changes that are going to end up happening in the final. Nothing really drastic though. It'll pretty much be as what I've done, maybe some color changes and some adaptations, going lighter in places. Also, while doing this, my intention was to do the final on Bristol board with color pencil, possibly some mixed media color pencil. While working through the process of this and seeing what the color study told me about the subject, this is very heavy in black because of the era it's in. And also his costuming and things like that, there's just a lot of red, a lot of orange, a lot of yellow in it. And I felt to get the nuances and the contrast better, this would be more appropriate done in watercolor. So I'm going to end up taking this and doing watercolor instead of color pencil for its final. And that will be in the series called For the Love of Execution, which will premiere at the end of July on Friday. And that's where I will take you through the completion process of this color study and of this draft that I've done. All right, well, thanks everybody for following me on this first subject and watching me kind of figure out how I wanted to do this series. And We'll see you on episode 20 where I do the write-up and make the notes and start to prep it for its final. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day, and I hope all the good things you want for yourself become manifest. Alrighty, Speedy out. Bye-bye, guys.